Kill the screen, eh? Police! Search warrant! Police! Search warrant!
Search warrant! Search warrant! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Clear this house! Sure.
In that clip, you can see him in the dark of night shouting, "Police search warrant," announcing right as they then invade the home.
Police! Search warrant!
They enter the home, turn immediately to the left, where you can see there's a lit hallway, and you see an individual brandishing something. And you can't immediately detect what it is, but you can see that he's holding something up. And yet, within just milliseconds, you see an officer fire 3 rounds into the chest of Blair, who then immediately drops.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
There was a golf club that he was holding up, thinking he was being invaded. That officer who shot Blair, he put 3 rounds and later said that he suspected it might have been a sword. He saw that it was a shiny object, and he was justified later by the prosecutor in his use of force.
And he's not conscious, doesn't appear to be breathing.
Not conscious, doesn't appear to be breathing.
When the police make a mistake in one of these cases and shoot someone who isn't really a threat, they're always forgiven because it's the volatility of the situation. You know, a reasonable person in the officer's position could have, made the same mistake. The people on the receiving end of these raids aren't given that consideration, right? You're woken up in the middle of the night to armed men in your house, breaking into your house, and you're supposed to wake up and immediately conclude that the armed men in your home are police officers and not, armed criminals there to kill you. And if you make a mistake and, reach for a gun, reach for anything to defend yourself, you're done. I mean, you're probably going to die. And if you do manage to get some shots off and do manage to survive the next 4 or 5 seconds, you're probably going to go to jail for the rest of your life.
What you need to look at when we're doing these evaluations is, would a reasonable and prudent police officer take the threat that he's receiving and react to it the way that he did? He has to make a decision in a matter of seconds, and that decision that he makes will hang with him and be evaluated by multiple people for years to come. And as such, I can only see from the outside looking in that his evaluation was that he was going to receive a threat of serious bodily injury to himself or somebody else, and he neutralized that threat.
You will find situations where officers are justified in taking the life of someone that is unarmed. The reality is that the circumstances oftentimes are so dynamic that whether they are armed or not is not the question. The question is what is the perception of the officer at the time? The average shooting, there's just no opportunity, nor do we want to train officers to take that extra 15 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever that time frame is, to make these kinds of determination. Because remember, in their mind, the whole reason they're using deadly force is you're about to kill me or someone else. There's not enough time.
If you have a raid where an innocent unarmed person gets killed, and the conclusion is that A, none of the officers involved in the raid violated any department policy, and B, none of the policies themselves need to be changed, the only conclusion you can draw from that is that it's perfectly acceptable for unarmed, innocent people to be killed during drug raids. I mean, that's the only conclusion you can come to. And that's, on its face, an absurd conclusion, and should tell you that something in that process, one of those steps, is wrong.
This is a project, Woods Cross High School Greenhouse Project. They've been trying for 2 years to get a greenhouse that would actually grow plants without dying from lack of water. What we're going to do is show you that with the pressure that we have and the volume that you have, you can completely cover the table with plenty of volume, plenty of water. All it takes is a little bit of knowledge of physics and using what you got and doing the best that you can with what little you got to work with.
It's very rewarding to me to do the job as thoroughly as it can possibly be done, to learn every truth that can be learned.
And go through here. Move it out away from the wall. Right there. See how it's lined up over there? The red represents the rounds that were fired by the police officers, and the yellow represents the rounds fired by the suspect. We got a gun battle going on right here. And what we're doing is reconstructing who fired from where. There's an entry. There's a hole. Yeah, there's a bullet. Oh, there's that bullet. This is a bullet that hit somebody. Preserve this, we will mark it. How about that? They spent a year and 10 months in Europe, and at least, you know, and they missed it.
Is a crazy check to find out.
They missed it.
The question is, are the laws valid? Are they legitimate that create these circumstances with the Todd Blairs and the Matthew David Stewarts and others who are then put in the position of conflict with police officers, where police officers, rightly or wrongly, feel threatened? The problem isn't so much the police officers themselves as it is the system and the laws that they're then enforcing. The issue is that we're criminalizing the simple possession and ingestion of drugs, and then we're authorizing mass quantities of violence to go in and punish people who do that.
Danielle had a very bright personality. She was always so happy. She made other people happy. I lived in this little bubble. I liked my little bubble. I stayed in my little bubble that kept me safe. But now my eyes are open and I see it now. There's no way to close them again.
Police claimed that their lives were in danger when they opened fire, killing an unarmed woman.
2 detectives claimed they watched Danielle Willard make a drug buy and then drive off. They allegedly watched her pull over and take the drugs when they came up to her car.
Your heart's racing. You're scared. You see 2 people you don't know that have guns pulled out at you and you don't know why. You're going to just bolt.
Miss Willard put the vehicle in reverse and backed out of the parking stall. As this was occurring, Detective Calley was struck by the vehicle, and both Detective Calley and Salmon fired their service weapons.
When I found out she was dead, I couldn't breathe. I think about it right now, and in the pit of my stomach, those words keep coming back to me that Danielle's dead. And as the words keep coming back to me, every time I hear it, it's still not real. I go and I see her at the morgue. It's my baby girl. It's my baby girl.
You can see the wheels. Some faint marks are still here showing the angle of the front wheels, and you can see faintly the rear wheels of the Subaru, left rear, right rear here. So tracing that bullet through the holes in the windshield and out the hole in the rear window, it actually is pointed in the direction of the corner of the building. So we're going to search an area that's 10 feet high and 10 feet low, 30 feet wide, and we should find that bullet somewhere. Melissa asked me to help them learn anything about the case. They knew nothing. They kept it, it was totally closed to any knowledge whatsoever. The police released nothing. The press knew nothing. Nobody knew anything about that case, and everybody was digging, trying to find out what they could about how and why this happened to her 21-year-old daughter. Now let me have you back up a little bit, and let me show you what the evidence shows happened. This officer fired 2 shots from approximately this location right here. The medical examiner said they were fired from an intermediate distance. That means that it's 6 or 8 feet or longer. Intermediate. It's not close enough to get powder. There was no residue on her body. It wasn't close to the window. There's no evidence to show that it was close, which means he was a safe distance from the vehicle that's supposedly running him down.
The militarization of policing is really cultural, and we saw a number of examples of training documents in which it really appeared that the police were being trained to think of themselves as soldiers and of the people that they're supposed to be serving as enemies.
I know something's wrong. I knew it in my gut to begin with. And I told everybody I will not stop until these officers are in prison.
Even though it was clearly a homicide, her life was taken unnecessarily, under Utah law, it will be very difficult to overcome the law which gives the police protection. It's immunity. If they acted under color of law, if they feared for their safety, this triggers governmental immunity protection. We need more transparency. We need more accountability. But more important than anything is the national issue of equality under the law. When certain people in our society can break the law with impunity and regular citizens are required to obey the law, there is a disparity there that has to be addressed. This is probably about the 20th time I've been to the Stewart residence.
This is a list of all of the evidence collected so far on the case. These are all bullet fragments or shell casings.
We were able to recover 54 of the bullets that were fired. The police recovered 31. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got them all. By being able to determine deflection angles, penetrations, calibers of bullets, different weapons that were used, we were able to reconstruct this crime scene almost as if we were here videotaping it at the time. The police state their position and their account was that the suspect stuck a gun around the corner, ambushed them, opened fire, and shot Officer Grogan in the face, and he fell into the floor in the bathroom. The physical evidence disproves all of that. The evidence shows that Stewart put his arm out at least that far. Officer Grogan actually had fired the first 2 rounds that were fired. The very first shot hit Matt in the arm. From the angle of the wound, there is no way that Matthew David Stewart could have been pointing the gun at the officers when he was hit. An officer fired 2 rounds from the kitchen. This was one of the 2 bullets. The other bullet traveled in this small space, the clearing between that wall and this wall and this wall. Officer Grogan was in this position, firing. The bullet entered here. It went through his face. It splattered blood on the door. If we calculated it right, the bullet would have fallen all the way right here, and I should be able to reach in here and pull out a slug. Perfect. That look good? This is a .40 caliber bullet. Matt was firing a 9mm Beretta. So the bullet doesn't match anything that Matt was firing. But look how distorted it is. That is the kind of distortion you get when you strike bone, when you strike a mass. In all probability, this bullet has DNA evidence from Officer Grogan's face. This would prove positively that Officer Grogan was shot by friendly fire.
Well, I guess as far as the possibility of friendly fire, you can never rule anything out. I mean, you always hear the term anything's possible, but you got to look at it as probable. In this situation, where everybody was positioned and where people were taking aim and firing, I don't see where there was a possibility of friendly fire.
With it being such a chaotic scene and people were shooting and people were doing this, it's a surprise that no one did get shot accidentally by another officer. That is a surprise. And I think that just goes to speak volumes for our the training we have.
Now, Matt Stewart fires down the hallway. Bam, bam. They had fired 30 rounds at him and hit him once. He fires 2 rounds. He hears them and hears them going out into the carport area. He moves forward. This is dangerous because he's now, for the first time, exposing himself. And at this point, he fires a clearing round up through the ceiling. This is a typical military tactical maneuver. He's got him on the run. He's now on the aggressive. Stewart is moving down the hall, and Frankham is here. Stewart fires 2 shots from here. Frankham is in this position. The bullets travel through his arms, hands area, strikes his chest. Frankham is trying to get up and get out, and they're helping him and dragging him. And at this point, Stewart, the suspect, moves forward. Stewart continues to fire. But this is the place where Frankham was fatally shot. Stewart retreats back to the back bedroom, slits this screen, and bails out the window onto the awning at the back of the house. Stewart took a position prone inside the shed out back. The police opened fire on the shed and they fired 60 rounds.
Yeah, get out the back window.
5 rounds went through the shed and struck the residence to the south. 10 of those rounds went through the house, the shed, the fence, and struck the second house down.